Sticky Honey Roast from Genshin Impact. I like to call it Waifu Simulator. Thank you to Ridge.com for sponsoring today's video. Hello again, little brother. Big brother, what are you doing here? I've come to teach you a final lesson. There's nothing more I can learn from you. I have finally surpassed you. Brother, there's no way you could have done this. You can't gain strength without losing speed. But now I can hold 12 cards with cash. Ha! You're pathetic. Take this. That'll teach him. I have surpassed you, brother. That no longer works. Nani? I'm made of titanium with an RFID blocker. Impossible! No! Gain strength, speed, and 10% off with ridge.com/CHEFPK. Now for the sticky honey roast, I'm going to be using a pork shoulder. I have about 3 pounds or about 1.5 kilograms worth of pork shoulder that my butcher had already trussed for me. This is a nice thick boy that we're going to be using for this. Now first we need to make our brine. For this you need 1 liter worth of water, 25 grams worth of brown sugar, 40 grams worth of kosher salt. And bring this thing to the stove and we're going to dissolve all of the sugar and the salt within the water. While that's getting dissolved, grab 150 milliliters worth of pineapple juice and we're going to add 50 milliliters worth of soy sauce straight to this. Now I'm also using some really beautiful raw honey that I have on hand and I'm just going to go for a big old tablespoon of this. I'm going to say around 30 to 40 grams worth of honey. Now set this liquid to the side and let's work on a little mirepoix. For this mirepoix, I'm going to be using 2 carrots, just a rough chop. Don't worry about peeling them or anything, just chop them up. Grab 1 lemon, cut this in half and don't worry about juicing it quite yet. And do the same thing with 1 whole navel orange. I like using the navel oranges because they tend to be a little sweeter. And for some heat, I am going to be using 1 raw habanero. Feel free to use something like a jalapeno if you don't want it too spicy, but you do want a little spice in there. Finally, we're also going to add in 1 roughly chopped sweet onion. I like using the sweeter onion because it isn't as harsh and they do impart a really nice flavor when they are soaked within the brine. Remove the peel if you want. You can leave this on as well. It's not a huge deal. And just give this a rough chop. Remember, you don't need to be fancy with this mirepoix because it is just going to soak in this brine. Now, once your initial liquid has fully dissolved, grab the same amount of liquid worth of ice. Pour in your hot liquid on top of that ice to cool it down, and this is also going to dilute it. Throw in 2 to 3 bay leaves right into your liquid, and then start juicing all of your citrus right into your brine. Remember to leave the flesh of the lemons and the oranges in that brine to impart additional flavors. Throw in your habanero, and then grab the pineapple, soy, and honey mixture, dump this into your brine, realizing that you probably should have heated up that honey just a little bit within the brine. And try as you might and stir as you want, this will not break down like this. Add the rest of your carrots and your onions right into your brine as well, and then throw in about 5 to 6 cloves worth of garlic. Make sure this isn't warm at all before you decide to use it for your pork. That's super important. Now grab a container that will be deep enough to hold your pork. My pork is pretty thick, so I wanted to make sure the container was pretty deep. Start dumping your brine right on top of the pork, taking care not to splash this everywhere so you don't have to clean it all up. See all that honey at the bottom of that bowl? Yeah, that sucks. Now since my pork wasn't completely covered, I made another small batch of brine and actually heated up the remainder of that honey so that way it would dissolve properly. Adding in that additional brine did really help cover the pork, and I threw in some extra pineapple bits just because I had them laying around from that pineapple juice we used earlier. Poke this around just a little and then grab some paper towel and place this over the top of it so you hopefully get even coverage while this is sitting. Now throw your lid on it and pop this in the fridge overnight. Oh, and don't forget the rosemary because I think there's rosemary on top of this, so you want to have some rosemary in your brine. Now we got to make the sauce, and for the sauce you're going to need 300 milliliters worth of fresh orange juice, or you could just buy orange juice, do whatever you want. Throw your orange juice into a small sauce pot, hit this with 100 milliliters worth of light soy sauce, followed by 75 grams worth of brown sugar, and then 75 grams worth of honey. You're finally going to add in 2 grams worth of chili flakes to add just a touch more heat to this sauce. Now once you have everything in your pot, go ahead and bring this to the stove and start dissolving all of those sugars. This isn't going to be super thick, so we are going to thicken it with some cornstarch slurry. Start off with 100 milliliters worth of water and add in about 10 grams worth of cornstarch. Mix this until you get your slurry and then bring this back over to the stove, and while your sauce is at a very hard simmer, almost boiling, start slowly adding in some of your slurry. I didn't actually need all of my slurry, so your mileage may vary. Now as you add your slurry, do make sure you have this over a high heat because the slurry won't activate without high heat. Once you have this beautiful thick boy glaze, you are ready to go. Remove it from the pot, placing it into a heat-proof container, and since I did make this the day before I roasted my pork, I went ahead and let it cool down just a bit before popping it into the fridge for tomorrow. Now it is bake/roast day. Remove your pork. Actually, don't remove your pork yet. Move this bowl over to the side and grab a sheet tray lined with parchment paper with a roasting rack. Now place your pork on top of that roasting rack and look at that thick boy. brined, ready to go. Grab your sauce that has now thickened up, looking like a little bit of gloop, and place that into a small saucepan so that way you can reheat this so you can actually spread it onto your pork. Just keep this over about a medium heat so you don't end up burning any of it. Once it is warmed back up and it's ready to go, grab a brush and start slathering this bad boy with this beautiful sauce. I should probably put in some NSFW music right now. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's good. Make sure you get total coverage all over this pork so that way every crevice is covered. You are going to need an oven-safe thermometer for this. Probe your pork directly into the center, as center as possible. Remove any hot sheet trays out of the oven because you leave stuff in there, and then throw this into the oven at 325 degrees for about 1 hour. After that initial hour, pull your pork out, grab your glaze, and watch as it's so blurry and the camera is just focused on, I don't even know what it's focused on, but you do need to glaze it after 1 hour. Bring the heat up to 375 Fahrenheit. Oh, look, it was focused on this for some reason. And continue baking it. Now we do have to make a platter worth of carrots. Just go ahead and peel them up, making sure they're super clean. And once they're cleaned, you can cut these on a super hard bias, so that way they have a little bit more surface area to... Really? I'm talking here. When you cut things on a bias like this, you have a better surface area to have better plate coverage later. Alternatively, you can use some greens if you would like some Swiss chard or some roasted kale. Now, once you have all of your carrots ready to go, drop this in some boiling salted water to blanch them. You only need to blanch them for about 6 minutes. We want these to be al dente, so when you remove them from the hot water, just run some cold water over them, and they should have a little flex to them, but also have a little bit of a crunch to them, so that... Really? Again with the carrots? What are you doing to these carrots? Now, if your sauce has thickened back up like mine has, you can grab a touch of hot water and add this to your sauce, and it's going to help thin it back out. Just make sure you do stir it carefully so you don't get it all over the place, and I lucked out on this one. I didn't make a mess. Once you have a nice viscosity, you should be ready to go. Now, once your pork has reached 155 degrees Fahrenheit, pull it straight out of the oven and place it onto the stove. This is when you do want to pull out the probe immediately so it doesn't get stuck in your pork. Let this rest for about 15 to 20 minutes. You do need this rest time. Do not ignore the rest time. After resting, remove the butcher's twine if it's still on there. It should still be on there because where else would it go, Paul? What would you do with it? Once you've removed the butcher's twine, you can cut an ever so small piece for yourself because you deserve it before feeding anyone else. Look at how delicious this pork looks. Beautifully glistened, beautifully glazed, nice and fatty. That's your snack. Now, if you are serving this to someone, I would recommend just cutting small steaks out of it, but in Genshin Impact, they have these ever so slight half cuts within the pork to kind of show off the center, and that's what I want you guys to see right now. Look at the center of this pork. It's super juicy, it's super tender, it's really easy to cut, and this is ready to plate up. Grab your favorite target plate, add your blanched carrots to that as a bedding, and place your pork ever so gently right on top of that bed of carrots. Now grab your sauce and glaze it slightly right on top, making sure you do get some sauce into each and every crevice of this pork so it stays nice and juicy. And there you have it, the sticky honey roast from Genshin Impact. And there it is, guys, the sticky honey roast from Genshin Impact. This was the first thing that Amber said she was gonna treat us to, and I'm gonna hold her to that one. It smells absolutely delicious, and that little sprig of rosemary really does kind of entice you to want to eat it. So let's just jump in. Now, because this is so big, I'm actually just gonna rip a piece off. It's super tender, which is really, really nice. Get some of the sauce on there, and look at the inside of that. Look at how beautiful that looks. Cheers. It's spicy, it's slightly sweet, it has that beautiful rich pork fat in there. It has all of the flavors that I could ever want from something like this. Sweet, salty, spicy, everything is there. A little bit of caramelization on top. I think I'm gonna eat it just like this. I'm not gonna make it with any rice or anything. Make this for Christmas dinner instead of whatever else you were thinking. If you want to support the channel directly, check out the links below for a bunch of really cool new merch. My name is CHEFPK. Get subscribed. Remember, keep playing with your food. I'm out. I may actually eat all of this.